Hello. So I wanted to share an argument about against the lockdowns, and it comes from the trolley problem, and it's basically an argument that suggests that it's, if in doubt, it's better to err on the side of not doing anything rather than something. So you've got the trolley problem: train on a track, no brakes, heading towards a group of people, and you're going to kill them, hypothetically speaking. Or you can pull a switch, go off to a side track where there is people there as well, and the trolley problem has various degrees of how many people. You know, if you've got five over here, one over there, one over there, and five over there, all this kind of stuff. And I want to suggest that if in doubt, it's better not to pull the switch. It's better to do nothing and plough on. So, in this situation, the trolley problem, you're heading towards a group of people. If there's absolute clear sunlight over here, nobody at all, then pull the switch. Obviously, in obvious scenarios, pull the switch. If there's like a million people here and one person there, yeah, probably pull the switch. But if in doubt, certainly if it's like 50-50, I think you shouldn't pull the switch, because there's this sense of when you pull the switch, you are now culpable. This is your action. Whereas when you do nothing, it's not your fault. And so certainly when you think of the lockdowns with things like pandemics and other natural disasters, hurricanes and all this kind of stuff, these are acts of God generally. I mean, whose fault is the pandemic? You could blame China or whatever, but it's certainly not the rest of the world's fault. Particularly, these are acts of nature, acts of God, and they're tragic, but they will kill lots of people, and it's not really anybody's fault. Now, obviously, if there's anything you can do, if you take all the different ways that you can deal with the pandemic and treat each one of those as a separate switch, a separate trolley cart experiment, and each one, masks or something. Should we wear masks? Where you look at the two tracks, how many lives will it save? How many lives will it kill? And if it's like if over there it's not going to kill anybody, and whereas it might actually save lives, then you kind of you pull that switch. It seems fairly harmless. But if other switches like the lockdowns and things like this, you have to think twice about it. And so the pandemic is it's an act of nature. Same with hurricanes. It's not really the government's fault. You can maybe put some blame on the government for not responding well enough here and there, but basically, I just don't think it's their fault. Whereas the lockdown, now that is their choice. That's their fault, and if that leads to deaths, there's something of a degree of magnitude. It seems more important, more culpable there. So if you think about another example where, like the hospital, if you think of in a hospital and you've got 5 people who all need operations, all need transplants, a heart transplant, a kidney transplant, a liver transplant, whatever, and then into the hospital walks a healthy person, and you decide to kill that healthy person, take their organs, and give it to the 5 patients. You've just saved 5 people for the price of 1. You've killed 1 person, you've saved 5. So in the trolley cart, it would be like having 5 on the track there, 1 on the track over there. You pull the switch, you kill the 1, save the 5. Here you've just killed somebody, taken their organs, saved the 5, killed the 1. In the hospital example, most people hopefully look at that and think that's wrong. You can't do that. And when you look at that, it's like, that's because if you did nothing, you've got these 5 people, they need 5 organs to survive or they're going to die, and if you do nothing, that's tragic. 5 people die, but you're less culpable. It's an act of nature, it's fate, it's just happened. Whereas once you kill the person, yes, you save 5 and you killed 1, but that was your action, and so certainly even in a 5-to-1 scenario, sometimes I feel uneasy in the trolley car experiment about pulling the switch. Even if there was 5 up ahead and only 1 to the left, I still feel uneasy about pulling the switch, probably because I've looked into this trolley problem so much. I've gotten a sense now of like what it means to pull the switch. It means pushing the fat man over the bridge, if you know what I mean. If you've gotten into this, it means you are culpable and you have to take the responsibility. Whereas if you do nothing, it's like it's more an act of God. I don't know whether that's weaseling out of the trolley problem at all, but that's how it seems to me in this situation. And what's even more worse about it, though, in this situation is, in the hospital example, the man walking in, he's got nothing to do. Fate has handed these 5 people a bad card. They need operations to survive. That's what fate has handed. This guy is free from that fate. And when you kill him, you have basically just brought him into it, and it's punished him for something that fate had, a hand that fate hadn't dealt him. And in the pandemic situation, you've got the pandemic has handed a bad hand to elderly people and vulnerable people, people plus 80, 90, a certain proportion of the population. This is what the hand that fate has dealt, and it's for them. Whereas all these people who are going to be affected by the lockdown, they have nothing to do with it. So, I did a video yesterday showing all the people that are going to be affected by the lockdown, and you've got, there's going to be like 1.2 million under 5s around the world in third world countries who are going to die from the lockdowns. Arguably, a lot of these, if you hadn't done the lockdowns, these kids would have survived. They weren't affected by the coronavirus. The coronavirus passed them by, and arguably as well, there's hunger deaths and tuberculosis deaths and malaria deaths, HIV deaths, and so many cancer patients that, maybe the cancer patients, they would have been fine with the coronavirus, but now they're going to die. Basically, by pulling that switch, governments have chosen to pass that problem over to all of these people who had nothing to do with it. They would have been fine, and now they're having to suffer. They're suffering, and again, so the pro-lockdown people would say, but yes, these people would have died, but now we have arguably more deaths from people from the lockdown, and these people had nothing to do with it either. So it's like it's not just deaths versus deaths. And even if it's deaths versus deaths, the lockdowns lose. You shouldn't have locked down because you're going to have more deaths. But even if it wasn't, even if it was less deaths, there's still something about the action of pulling that switch that you have now brought all these people that weren't involved in this thing into it. And I'm not saying that that's never the right thing to do. It seems to me like in some situations you could argue that you have to do things like that, but I feel really uneasy about it. There's something about it. I don't know. I just thought I'd share that thought. Not 100% with any of this stuff, because there's all, sometimes I get the feeling that some people lean more utilitarian, other people lean more deontological. I lean more deontological, but maybe there are arguments. Some very clever people lean much more utilitarian. And my feeling about utilitarianism has always been that the only being that can be a utilitarian is God, because God knows everything. Whereas because we don't, we should lean deontological. But some people lean utilitarianism, and maybe there's arguments that I've missed, but still, generally, I think you should err on the side of not pulling the switch if in doubt, because otherwise it makes you kind of culpable, and you're bringing in people who weren't affected, and you're deliberately bringing them into this. Whereas if you just let fate do its thing, it's tragic. And again, if there are any ways that you can pull the switch that are easy, with masks, with social distancing, with just simple measures that can help, and they're not going to disrupt people, then pull those switches. That seems fine. But if you're in doubt, you should err on the side of not pulling the switch. Okay, that's all for today. Bye bye.